Hi everyone, my name is Hala Saleh and I will be talking to you today about the product management hierarchy of needs. So I'll go into all of this in a few slides, what we mean by the hierarchy of needs, what the framework is, and how we're applying it to product management. Um, First of all, a little bit about me. So I am a bit of a wanderer, career-wise, location-wise, and adventure-wise. And I will tell you a little bit more about that in my fun timeline below. I'm also a mom, and that's very important to me as well. And I'm passionate about learning and teaching. So when product school asked me if I wanted to be involved in this, I was really excited and immediately said yes, and wanted to participate and help share some of my thoughts and some of what I've learned about product management throughout the years. So when I say I'm a bit of a wanderer career-wise, I graduated with a degree in computer science, probably like many of you who are product managers or who work within the product space. I started my career as a software programmer that lasted maybe 3 years. And then I decided I wanted to move on and try something different. So I did quality assurance engineering for a couple of years. Realized quickly that I wanted to do something more than just quality assurance, and I wanted to really figure out how programs and projects come together. So I did program management and project management in two different companies. All throughout this, by the way, till now, I worked at a number of smaller companies as well as large companies. So it spanned the startups and the larger established companies. I like to say that I became Twitter famous, which is a little bit of a joke, but I helped run this online Twitter community of project managers called PM Chat. And it's still an active community, and we just actually had a reunion show last week. So if you go onto Twitter and search for hashtag PM Chat, you can find a lot of great topics around project management that really apply across the industry. And I helped run that for a while. And then in between, I also did a little bit of dabbling in entrepreneurship and tried to start my own startup. Decided at one point that I wanted to do more agile versus traditional project management. Told the company that was about to hire me that I wanted to be an agile coach and trainer. So that's what I did. And then I decided I really liked the idea of product management. I learned how to be a product owner through my agile training. And this is actually an important point as we think about product management, because it goes beyond the typical product ownership roles and responsibilities that we learn about when we're learning about Agile. So look for articles, and also I'm happy to provide resources around the difference between the two. But I decided I wanted to expand my scope and really think about product management and end-to-end ownership of a product. After that, I also dabbled a little bit in entrepreneurship and did a little startup with a few friends that I met at a startup weekend. You can look for that online too. It was called Num Num Finder, and it was a fun food truck finding app. Then I decided I should get serious about my jobs and go back to working at a bigger company and learn how to do product management at scale. So I worked as a product manager, as an IC, and then did more director of product at this big company that I was recently employed at, which is Expedia. And then I moved from just product and expanded my scope into strategy as well. So as you can see, I've done a lot through my career and moved through different roles. And I wanted to go into that for a few minutes before starting, just to give you guys all a sense that it's okay and it's totally acceptable and helpful to explore different interests as you are building your product management career. Definitely you will want to get to a point where you're building more depth, but the breadth helps as well, because that's the kind of job that product management is. It's really a breadth as well as depth type of role. So the more breadth you have, the more skills you bring to the table and to your role. Moving from who I am, let's talk about what this hierarchy of needs is that I'm talking about. So the hierarchy of needs is a theory that explains human motivation and what it takes for us to thrive. You may have already heard of the hierarchy of needs, so bear with me for just a couple of minutes while we go over it again. The hierarchy of needs is organized with the most fundamental needs being at the bottom and the less fundamental needs being at the top. So Abraham Maslow was the psychologist who proposed this hierarchy of needs. He studied human motivation and meaning. What provides meaning for humans, and why do we do what we do? In 1943, he published a paper called A Theory of Human Motivation. In that paper, he proposed his hierarchy or pyramid of human needs that you see to the left. And the theory proposes that needs lower down in the hierarchy must be fulfilled before us as humans become motivated to achieve or try to accomplish some of those higher level needs. So meaning, if we don't feel like we have our physiological needs of food and water and warmth secured, then we're not going to really pay that much attention to the needs at the higher levels, like creating and maintaining intimate relationships, or having status in society and respect and self-esteem. Again, as I had talked about earlier, the most fundamental needs are at the bottom. We try to fulfill those, and then we start going up and up and up, that hierarchy of needs. Now, the hierarchy of needs can also be used as a framework or a way to organize our thoughts around a certain concept. And that's what we're going to do today. Now, what does a framework do for us? Well, frameworks are awesome. Frameworks are flexible. They give us structure, and our brains like structure. And frameworks are not 100% literal. I want to focus on that point, because when we use something as a model for how we think about something, that means that it's not exact. It's not exact science. The things that we're going to present and we're going to talk about don't have to be exactly in the spot that I present them in. Also, even with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's not true that you have to only go from bottom to up. You can also have times when you're going up, down, where you're going from one level to another, where you're skipping levels. So just because somebody is poor, for example, which is one of the basic safety needs, is not met, doesn't mean that they can't seek esteem or love and belonging. So it's not 100% literal, but it does give us a way to organize our ideas and our thoughts. So think about it that way when we're talking about it in the context of product management. So as I just mentioned, that disclaimer at the bottom, use it to organize and understand priority as you're thinking about what makes a successful product manager. So our desired outcome today is a framework for thinking about what it takes to succeed at product management. And if we take that hierarchy of needs and we think about it in the different layers and levels, at the very bottom will be the most fundamental set of needs or requirements, and then the less fundamental above, and then a little bit more aspirational at the top. I tried to use a different term like growth at the very top, and my 13-year-old son liked the word aspirational better, so I kept that one on the side. So, spoiler alert, successful product management is not about perfectly executing a roadmap. So this is one thing that if we're coming into product management from, for example, product ownership, and from the Agile framework of what does a product owner do, we sometimes come into it with this mindset of there's a specific roadmap and my job is to execute on that roadmap and to implement that roadmap and get it out. So that is not how we think about successful product management. It's not about getting a set of requirements from the business or even the customer or the CEO and then executing specifically to what that roadmap says. Roadmaps that are, especially ones that are devised, way ahead of time of a certain date, assume that we know everything we need to know ahead of time. Hint, if you've worked at all in any kind of technology or product development industry, you know that we don't know everything ahead of time. Roadmaps can still be useful, though, if we understand and agree that they will most likely change and adapt. When I did a lot more project management than product management, my pet peeve was Gantt charts, because we can spend a lot of time getting into the nitty-gritty of developing a Gantt chart very similar to a roadmap, and think that we know exactly what's going to happen on, February 2nd, 2021, we are going to release this product and it's going to do this for the business, etc. So the more granular and specific your roadmap is further ahead of time, the less useful and the more likely it is to change. So then, what is successful product management? Successful product management is about being empowered to solve customer problems. So we always want to start with a problem. We're going to talk about it in terms of customer problem just because that's the majority of the types of problem that we solve when we are doing product management. So when we start with the customer problem, an empowered product team is allowed to use all these techniques that we learn about within product management to do what we call continuous product discovery. So one of the problems that we face a lot within product management and when we're trying to do successful product management is that we learn all of these great things about product discovery and customer discovery and interviewing and A/B testing and multivariate testing and rapid prototyping and all of these great techniques, and then we're not actually empowered to implement those techniques. So when we're taught all of these great techniques, which is really exciting for a product manager because that's what drives our passion, and then we're given a roadmap, and once we're on the job and we're told, here's a roadmap and I know what the end solution needs to be, now go figure out how to execute it. You strip away that empowerment from the product team of exploration and discovery, and you actually then turn them into more of an execution and a delivery team, which is really what we don't want to do. So what we're trying to do is allow for this continuous discovery. Now, this framework that's on this slide, I borrowed from Teresa Torres, who is one of my favorite speakers and coaches and resources really about product management, and her blog is called Product Talk. So go look it up, look the blog post up, and look at her different articles, and you will learn quite a bit from Teresa. One of my others that I've taken a lot of inspiration from, even for this presentation today, is Marty Kagan, and his book Inspired is actually a great book. I think I have it right here. So definitely look through the book and read it, and there's a lot of information that's very relevant to what we'll be talking about today. So then, in order to actually get to that point where we are an empowered product team, it requires a lot of trust. It requires a lot of leadership from our leaders in the organizations we work in, and less management. So we don't need people to be task managing and to tell us what to do and when to do it and exactly what feature needs to be delivered when, but rather we need leaders that are going to give us a strong product vision, a set of outcomes that we want to deliver towards versus outputs that they're expecting from us, and the space and time to do our discovery and really implement that product and customer discovery that we learned about and those techniques, so that we become better and better at those techniques and really start to find what we call product market fit and develop and release those products that are really solving customer problems. So when we think about successful product management, there are really three main pillars that represent product, process, and people. So the main pillars within successful product management are: you need to have a foundation of product knowledge. Now, this is table stakes. In order to be a good, successful product manager, you have to have that foundation of product knowledge, and it includes a number of different areas of knowledge. That includes user or customer knowledge. Do you understand your user? Do you understand who the customer of your product is? Do you understand their behavior? Have you studied how they consume your product, how they consume other products? What are the statistics around their usage? What is the customer feedback? What are the demographics? All different types of knowledge around the user or the customer. Do you have an understanding of data? Do you understand how to use data? Do you know how to use the analytics tools that your organization has provided to you? Are you able to go and look into the data tools and find the answers to some of your questions? Or do you know how to do that and how to get the answers, or what questions even to ask? What data is available to you? Do you have knowledge of the industry and domain? Do you know your industry well? Would you consider yourself an expert in the domain that you are going to be building a product? That doesn't mean that you need to be, a thought leader within that industry, but you do need to understand it and know it and study it. I would even expand that to kind of an understanding and knowledge of the macro and micro trends that are happening. So for example, as a product manager, sometimes it's really important for you to know what are the weather trends that are happening right now. Depending on your product, you might be really affected by whether there are storms, major weather events that are affecting people's, from my experience, I worked in travel for the last few years, that are affecting people's travel. For example, coronavirus and how a pandemic is going to affect the usage of your product. Will that increase? Will it decrease? So really think about yourself as a researcher, and you have to understand what's going on in the world in addition to your industry and domain. You have to understand and have knowledge of the business and the company that you work for. How does the business work? What is the business model? What is the company's set of values? Are they focused on profit? Are they focused on a different set of metrics for how is success measured? So really understanding your business will help you figure out how your product needs to operate within that environment and set of values. Also, product operational knowledge. I cannot tell you how many times I've met product managers that don't really know how their product works. Have you been on the website that you manage? Have you tried to use your product yourself? Do you understand where the pitfalls are? Do you know what parts of the product have a really good user experience? Do you know the back end of how it works? Why it jumps from point A to point B when you take a certain action? So really, really understanding your product is key. And I'm going to emphasize that because I know that sometimes it can be easy to get away with not really knowing your product and really just trying to solve problems. So the next pillar is process, skills, and techniques. And that incorporates things like product discovery techniques. Do you know how to explore within a customer problem? How to validate assumptions? Do you know how to survey, interview customers? Do you know how to prototype? What different techniques are there for prototyping? The second one here is product optimization techniques. Once you have a product that you've delivered, do you know how to then optimize it? That includes things like A/B testing and multivariate testing. Do you know how to take the data that you're getting from those tests and make decisions? And then lastly, product development and delivery techniques. Do you know how to work with an engineering team, with a product marketing team to get your product out into the world? And then lastly, people skills and responsibilities. So as a product manager, as a successful product manager, you're going to need to know how to collaborate and how to get teams to collaborate with each other. Sometimes that's just one team that you work with directly. Sometimes it's cross-functional teams and cross-organizational teams. You also have to have stakeholder management skills. You have people that are waiting for your product to be released, developed, for your product to be successful. How do you manage their expectations and make it so that you are providing an environment, even for your team, where they can succeed because you've done a good job setting expectations for your stakeholders? Evangelism skills is one that just a couple of years ago I had to really ramp up on, because I had a product that was really new to the way that the company thought about doing things. And if you're ever going to make a big change within an org, you're going to have to be able to get into a room and really cheerlead for that product, and tell everybody and have a strong story for what kind of change your product can create and how. And then finally, leadership skills. And that's, again, we get told a lot that as a product manager, you don't always have direct authority because people don't necessarily report to you, but you do have influence. And so how do you grow and teach yourself those skills so that you can influence people and influence decision making, and have that kind of leadership to drive towards a vision? So now we get to the fun part, which is organizing the elements of product management into that hierarchy of needs framework. So if you remember, at the bottom was the most fundamental, less fundamental, and then aspirational. So each level that we talk about is going to consist of a combination of product knowledge, process skills and techniques, and people skills and responsibilities, which we talked about before. So in this prior slide, we're going to take some of the product knowledge pieces, some of the process skills and techniques, some of the people skills and responsibilities, and combine them and mix and match them and put them at the different levels of the pyramid or the hierarchy. Now, another disclaimer, remember, there are many ways that we could choose to organize the elements of successful product management into a hierarchy or an order of priority or some kind of framework. So this is just one of them. And I would love for you guys to think, debate amongst yourself, for those of you that work together, or even online, on LinkedIn, or however you prefer to get in touch with your community, and discuss. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there parts of this that make no sense to you? Would you organize them a different way than I have? Message me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and message each other as well. The best thing that we can ever do as people who are trying to present and share knowledge amongst each other, really, because we all learn from each other, is to get a debate going and new ideas forming. So, all right, so then let's start with the most fundamental level of the product management hierarchy of needs. And we're going to start with the product knowledge areas. So in terms of product knowledge at the most fundamental level, you need to have product knowledge. You need to know how your product works. Obviously, if it's a product that already exists, you need to have already experimented with it and experienced it yourself. Put yourself in the customer's shoes. If it's a totally new product that you're developing, also understand what is the solution that you're proposing to the customer problem. Really understand what that product is. Next is user and customer knowledge. So you really need to spend time diving into the data and understanding who your user and customer are. What are their trends? Really slice and dice that data as many ways that you can think about to better understand that user and that customer. And then industry and domain knowledge. So spend that time. Do the reading, do the understanding. Where is the industry going? Are you seeing, other companies doing similar things? There are different companies approach competitive research differently. So your company and your org might approach looking at competitors and what they're doing differently than other companies. So understand how your company does that and do the research, but also don't stick to copying what the competitors are doing. That's not really the best way to understand the industry and domain, but it's rather think of it as knowledge. You're gaining knowledge. What are other people doing? That also provides you with an understanding of what opportunities and gaps are there out there. What are people not doing that you can do? All right, the next category is going to be around process. So at that most fundamental level of successful product management, what are the processes that you need to master and know as a product manager? So the first one is product discovery process. How do you discover and understand what are the needs that exist out there for your customer? What is the customer problem? What could you do to understand that customer problem better? In addition, what is the product optimization process? So for an existing product, how do you A/B test? How do you run multivariate tests? What does statistical significance mean? And then how do you make decisions based on the data that you're getting? What is considered success and what's considered failure? So those can be very different, and you need to understand those in order to run and execute your product management process. And then the last category is people. Team collaboration skills is also very fundamental. It's important because as a product manager, typically you will not have people reporting to you. Engineers don't report to you. Product designers don't report to you. So how do you get all of these people to collaborate and develop towards that, discover the right solutions for your customer problems, but then how do you also develop the right solutions and launch and release them? And then product evangelism skills. I really think that this is an important one as well. And sometimes as product managers, we leave the product evangelism to our leaders because sometimes we're just given a solution and told that this is the solution. When we really believe in the solution to the problems and we're an empowered team and we've been given that space to explore and discover what the right solution is for our customer, then we can also be the ones evangelizing our product and talking about how it's going to change things for the customer and for the business. And then also I put in here time management skills because if we don't get really good at managing our time as product managers, we can spend a majority of our time just fighting fires and managing the very tactical and never getting into the strategic thinking. And that's a place where many of us will find ourselves sometimes at different points and sometimes out of necessity. For example, when a big issue comes up, or the system goes down, or a big customer problem that we really need to solve immediately, or even situations like a pandemic, for example. Those are going to have us focusing a lot on the tactical, but as product managers, it's really helpful to know how do you balance and block time off for more strategic thinking as well as the tactical. So at the next level is the less fundamental set of needs. And looking at the different categories, there's product, so there's product knowledge, so there's technology knowledge. I didn't put this at the most fundamental level because a lot of us in product management do not come from a technology background, and that's totally okay. So while it is helpful and actually important to understand technology and how it works, I wouldn't consider being having a deep technology knowledge as one of the most fundamental skills to be a successful product manager. But you do want it to be an area of growth. In addition, user experience design knowledge. You don't have to be a designer yourself. You don't have to be able to design user experience, but you do have to understand what are the trends within user experience. Where are things going within the user experience world? So if you are stuck in a method of experience on your product or on your website that dates back to the 90s, you should know as a product manager that that's not relevant right now and that needs to change. You should be able to have that awareness. And then finally, business and financial knowledge. That's a set of knowledge too that, while it is very important, so less fundamental doesn't mean not important, I wouldn't consider it one of the most fundamental critical needs to be a successful product manager. These are skills and knowledge that you can gain over time. You don't necessarily have to understand all the different business models in the world, or all the different ways that the finances work within your company, or even monetization strategies, etc. But it is something that you'll want to learn over time in order to be really effective at your product management. And then within the process bucket, product development process. So for example, you heard me speak a little bit earlier about how I learned about Agile and Agile development. And regardless of what development methodology your engineering team uses, you have to be versed, you have to learn what that methodology is so that you can work effectively with your partners within engineering and other disciplines as well. And then product and customer discovery process. So even though we had a product discovery process in the most fundamental level in the previous slide, customer discovery process is another thing that I'm putting here as less fundamental, just because you might not have all of the different methods or know all of the different methods to do customer discovery, but if you know that it's essential, you can learn and you can gain skill set within that skill set area. So the final bucket here at this level is in the people bucket, and stakeholder management is one of the kind of less fundamental, again, still important, but not critical for you to succeed as a product manager. Stakeholder management becomes a really important skill, actually, even as you become more senior within product management. And so sometimes you can think about the skill sets that you're starting to see go higher up in the hierarchy of needs. They become more important and they actually become more fundamental the more senior you become and you grow in your career. In addition, leadership skills. So as a product manager, you can still be a successful IC product manager and be growing those leadership skills as you go along. And then finally, the aspirational level of the product management hierarchy of needs. Within the product bucket, I would say that understanding and having knowledge of emerging product trends, even emerging business model trends, is one of the aspirational needs that I would state here. And I say that because the business world moves fast, and even the product world nowadays moves fast. And so if you're going to be one of those product managers that is tasked with innovation and changing the way that your company does things, then really understanding emerging product trends is going to be a key skill set for you. If you're not really as focused on innovation or doing things in a new way, or that's really not your charter, then as you grow and as you learn, then knowing emerging product trends can become more important for you, but it doesn't necessarily need to be one of the more fundamental skill sets that you have on day one. Effective research techniques is another one that I would state here, and I put that one there because as long as you have a basic knowledge of how to do different research techniques, user research techniques, and explore for the customer, you can still be pretty effective. But even in the research world, new ways of getting data and researching customer trends and customer behavior is always emerging. So it's something to just look into. Within the process bucket, prototype development is also, I would say, an aspirational skill. So you don't have to necessarily yourself know how to develop prototypes in order to be a successful product manager. But if you do have that skill set, then you're even more equipped to help the team develop things more quickly, and potentially even just do things yourself sometimes if you're in that kind of an environment, like a startup environment or a really fast-moving team, etc. Another thing to look into and to read about is the design sprint process and rapid iteration facilitation. So how do you facilitate a design sprint or a rapid iteration cycle? And that, if you have that skill set as a product manager, you can do a lot with your team in terms of coming up with quick prototypes to validate assumptions or try new ideas or new solutions for problems that you are experimenting with and innovating. And then finally, within people, community management. How do you build community around your product? And it doesn't have to just be people who are working on your product. You know, I've had some times within my career where it's been really exciting because of the evangelism that you have at some of the lower levels of the pyramid or the hierarchy. You then start to build a community of people who are supporting your product and who want to see it succeed. And if you can do that, then you know, you almost have a built-in, you're set up for success within the org and within the company. And then finally, I would say growing product talent is also one of those aspirational, that as you grow in your career and as you become more skilled yourself, learning how to grow other product managers is also one of those higher level needs, I would say. So putting it all together, as you can see, I kind of just organized all of the different knowledge, skills, and techniques into the pyramid here. And these will be available. I think the slides will be available to everybody. And as always, you know, if you're a new product manager, or even if you have been doing product management for a while and you feel like it's time to refresh your career and your skill set, always start with the foundation. Think about these skills and knowledge areas that are mentioned here in the foundation, and where do you think that you have gaps? We all have gaps. None of us are perfect at every level of this pyramid. And start developing those. Start thinking about developing those before you move on to the less fundamental level and then the aspirational level. And then, you know, once you've mastered or you feel like you've filled in the gaps to the best of your ability, then you might want to move into the less fundamental level and then the aspirational. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of back and forth and up and down. You might have to use some of the skill sets that are in the less fundamental at a certain point of time, more than you have to use the most fundamental at the most fundamental level. And then finally, growth at every level is constant. So, you know, every product manager, whether they're super senior or super junior, might have some of the skills at different levels and need to grow different ones. So allow yourself that space for growth. So thank you very much for allowing me to share my thoughts around this. It's such a wide topic, and I just really wanted to provide a way for us to think about, as product managers, what is the most fundamental set of things we need to know, and then how do we grow from there. You can find me at LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is right there, and also on Twitter. I don't really get on there very much, but I do have an account. And thank you to Product School for inviting me. I hope everybody has a great day, and hopefully see you soon.